1850, the Fugitive Slave Act was instituted.
Many atrocities were committed during the 1850s. This Slave Act was most definitely one of them.
The heart-wrenching stories of the thousands of souls affected by this horrendous act are yet to be spoken.
Until now.
The Fugitive Slave Act worked as a way to appease slave owners in the South.
It allowed slave owners to reclaim lost slaves, even if they had successfully traveled to the northern United States, a free part of our country. Only slaves who escaped to the furthest north, Canada, were completely free of the law's grasp.
This poster shows a typical response to a runaway slave. The wanted poster usually consisted of when the slave went missing, a general description and the name of the slave, along with the reward being mostly in the range of about $100. The bounty could vary depending on the area of which the slave was caught.
As the act progressed, bounty hunters realized they could get away with capturing free African Americans, selling them off as slaves.
According to the act, those captured could not speak for themselves, present evidence of being a free citizen, or be given a trial. In reaction to the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, the abolitionists tried to thwart this law at every opportunity by taking political actions in Congress and warning the free and runaway African Americans.
Rather than have her children put into slavery, this slave instead killed him. This was the unfortunate outcome for many captures.
Dr. James O. Horton talks about the free African American Solomon Northup as just one of the slaves brought into and affected by this act. Thousands of others weren't lucky enough to stay out of the reach of slavery. Solomon was a free African American from New York who had never been a slave. He was also a skilled musician. And this man you see is Solomon Northup.
Solomon Northup had never been a slave. He was a musician working in New York State. He was approached by a couple white musicians who said, "Come with us. We're going to go to New York. We're going to put together a band. We're going to make some money." And he did. And they went to Albany, New York, and into New York City, and they formed a band, and they did quite well. And then they said, "Well, come to us to Washington. We're going to go to Washington, take our band to Washington and make more money." And he said, "Fine." And he went to Washington. And when he got to Washington, he found, because don't forget that Washington is now slave-holding territory, he found that he could easily be and was kidnapped into slavery. He served 12 years in slavery before he could get his freedom. It was not unusual for a free black person to be kidnapped into slavery.
Hi, I'm Jordan Blades.
And I'm Nick Savage.
And our documentary is on the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850.
The thing that was interesting about this act was the fact of what it really was about. It was about, yes, going back up to the north and capturing lost slaves that had run away. But another thing was about was it was also about being able to take free African Americans and bring them back. Because the way this worked was they couldn't speak on their own behalf. I mean, anyone who wanted to make a buck could just kidnap an African American, say they were a slave, and bring them to a plantation. They had no say in the matter. They couldn't present evidence otherwise of being free. And it's really horrible why they did this. They did this as a way to get back at abolitionists. They were slowly reducing slavery's power in the South. They were kind of, I guess you could say, edging in on their territory. And so they used this as a way to stop this. I mean, completely stop the abolitionists cold in their tracks. Another interesting thing was when the abolitionists received the news that this was going on, a lot of them in their towns, such as Boston and Chicago, started putting up signs and warning African Americans of certain areas of towns where they should avoid because there were bounty hunters and slave catchers there.
As this law progressed, it really just turned into a way for people who were looking for a bit of money to just find some even free African Americans or slaves and just turn them in for the money.
And now, Dr. James O. Horton's take on the matter.
One of the things that the Fugitive Slave Law of 1850 did, in addition to making it incumbent upon any American, black or white, to render assistance to those who were trying to recapture fugitives. But one of the things it did was to give fugitives practically no right of self-defense. They had no right to jury trial. They had no right to be taken to court. They had no right to speak on their own behalf. Now, you know what this does? It means that it makes it relatively easy for a free black person to be kidnapped into slavery.